Hi, it's Skip from Skip's Messy Workbench, and this video is my 99% finished fourth annual Unified Scale Auto Content Creator USACC group build. I say 99% because what's missing on it is my decals, which I was designing myself, and I normally do that, and I've done it many times before, but I had some issues this time, and I'll be creating a whole video just on that part of it. And then after I can get and I by the way I sent my designs over to Terry at STS. I'm sure he's going to be able to fix me right up for this time around. And then after I get the decals on, I need to add some racing crud to the body yet. So we're that's why I say it's 99% finished. So this year, as we all know, or at least those of us who are part of the group build, Kim at Kim's Custom Garage picked the Revell 1968 Dodge Dart Hemi. And I got to tell you again, this is a great kit. It was a great pick. Thanks, Kim. It was fabulous. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I wanted to do something this year that was completely outside of my comfort zone. And boy, I definitely stepped out of my comfort zone for this build. I don't know why I tend to do that for the USAC build, but I was really outside of my comfort zone. So as a modeler, I build cars, I build planes, I build science fiction. And normally when I build a car, I usually like to build it as if it's coming right off the factory assembly line. There's nothing like that new car smell, especially from the 60s and 60s. So I normally do that. But this time I took another trek away from that. So this time what I did was I wanted to build a dirt track late model stock car that would have ran on a dirt tracks in at least my area here in Pennsylvania, or in the tri-state area of Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, on the dirt tracks. So some of the tracks that we used to race on actually is the half-mile oval at Nazareth, PA, which is no longer operational. In fact, it's gone. It's a Chevy dealer now. There was a dirt track at Orange County Fairgrounds in Middletown, New York. That one is still operating. That's a nice track if you ever get up that way. The Third Mile High Bank Oval, Grandview, which is in Bechtelsville, PA, that's still operating. And there's a 3/8 mile oval, which is Big Diamond Speedway in Pottsville, PA. That one is still operating, and I try to get up to that one a couple of times a year. And there's a whole bunch of other ones that are still operating in the area, and some of them are much smaller. Anyway, I was involved in building one and helping on another of these late model stock cars in the mid to late 70s. I tried to find the rules from that time period, but I came up dry on it. So the only thing I remembered was that we had to run Hoosier tires. There had to be a roll cage, not just a roll bar. There had to be an approved racing seat with approved safety harnesses, and the fuel tank had to be removed and replaced with a fuel cell. So, that said, why don't you follow me on down to the shop and I'll show you what I came up with. So stick with me, hang in there. I'll be back in a minute, okay? Follow me down. Okay, thanks for following me down to the shop. And here is my 1968 Dodge Dart for the USACC build, the 4th annual USACC build. And it is 99% complete. I say 99% because I was going to, or not was, but I am making my own decals, and I ran into some difficulties with making the decals. Actually not making them, but having them show up on the car themselves. And I'm going to do a separate video on my decals and what I was going to do. But in the meantime, what I did was I sent my graphic files, which are nothing more than .png files, over to STS, and I'm sure Terry over at STS is going to be able to fix me right up, but I know I won't have them in time for the final, which is on the 16th, because today is the 11th of March, and I just know they won't be here in time. And even if they were here on time, I would not have time to get them mounted on the car. And then after they're mounted, I still want to add some dirtying to the body, because right now the body's a little too clean to have been on a dirt track. So that'll get done, but I need to wait to get the decals on it. All right, so that said, what I'll do is at the end of this video, I will put a artist rendering, not really an artist rendering, but a photo rendering of this car with how it should look once the decals are placed on it. And then later on, when I finally get the decals and I get them on, I'll do a quick video just to showcase what it actually looks like with the actual decals on it. What's nice about having the graphic files for your decals is that you can take the files, take a picture of your car, and then size them and position them on the car so that you know what the car is going to look like. Anyway, so I'll do that at the end of this. And then again, I'm going to shoot a whole other video about my decal and what I was attempting to do, because I've used my own decals in the past and it's always worked. And I now know why it's always worked and it's not working this time. But I'll get into that in another video, because this one's going to probably get too long to address it. So with this build, I really stepped out of my comfort zone. And for some reason, I try to always step out of my comfort zone for the USACC build. This is the 4th annual build, and I've been in 3 of them. I think I missed the second one, or I don't remember. Either way, but for each one of them, I've decided I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone, and if I booger up the car, I booger up the car. If I don't, I don't. So this car, I mean, it has some flaws in it, but I'm fairly happy with it so far. Anyway, but I did some things that I have never done before. One of those things is using 3D printed parts. I watch other guys and gals on YouTube and other channels and on Facebook and that using 3D printed parts, and they look so cool. So I decided I'm going to use some 3D printed parts this time around, and I'll show you what I did with that. And also, I did more scratch building on this car than I think I have ever done on a single model. And it gave me good practice. Again, not perfect because I'm still honing my skills, but I'm fairly happy with what happened. So what I did for the scratch build, or not for the scratch building, I'm sorry, for the 3D printed parts was the engine. And I wanted to use a Slant 6 in this car. Now this car is, again, I think I said it in my opening, that would have been like a backyard build sometime in the mid to late 70s. It was a late model stock car that would race on some of the local racetracks, the dirt tracks in the area, in our what we call the tri-state area of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, so that's where I was headed, and I was headed for a car that would have been built in the mid to late 70s, I think, like I said, because that's when I was working on 2 cars actually, with a bunch of guys that were in my life at that time. So I decided, you know what, I want to put a Slant 6 in this. And so I searched around and I found at VCG Resins, they have several Slant 6s. And the first one I tried was the Slant 6, let me just push this back a little bit, the Slant 6 Hyper-V, or not Hyper-V, but Hyper-Pack. And so this was the first time I ever did a 3D printed parts, and I really like it. It really is a nice engine, and it went together really well. Again, this is from VCG Resins, but there is no way, no possible way this engine was going to fit under the hood of this Dart. Let me pop the hood on here. There was no way this was going to fit under the hood of this Dart. So I couldn't use it, but I'll keep it, and it'll go in a car sometime in the future, because I'm just in love with the Slant 6. So here's the Slant. This guy in here. This is the. See if I can't hold this up with something. I'll use the Hyper-Pack to hold it up. I better not. Next thing I know, it's going to be sliding down. So anyway, this is the. Let me just raise the camera up a little bit. Okay. So this is also from VCG Resins. This is a Slant 6, but it is a concept engine. It is a Hemi Slant 6 turbocharged. And I think it's a great little engine. It fit under the hood. I mean, I really struggled to get this to fit under the hood. I made a few modifications to the frame to the frame and also to the body, but nothing dramatic to get it to fit. So this is also from VCG Resins, and it is a Slant 6 Hemi turbocharged engine, and I just think it is the neatest, the coolest little engine ever. I just love it. Again, though, it was a tough fit. In fact, if you can see here, the master cylinder, to get the master cylinder, and this also came from VCG Resins, the master cylinder, just that it clears the turbocharger. So it's just that it went in there. So that's that. The one thing I must say about this particular engine from VCG, the piping that came with it, this piping and some of the exhaust piping, it didn't make sense to me. And it could be just me, I'm sure. But I made my own piping. I had to bend and it's just rod. It's just styrene rod, like evergreen rod, that I bent in the location that I wanted it. So that's that. I wired it. It's hard to tell in here. I put the firing order correct on it, and which is a first for me also. I wire my engines, but I rarely do the firing order, but this one I did. And then I mounted some ignition boxes in there. And what I'll do is I'm going to show, I'll put a little image of this this engine out of the hood, either in somewhere on the screen here. All right. And then also on my website, you can also see images of the process that I went through while building these things. So that was the first thing that I 3D built for this car. The next thing that I did was in the 70s, in the late 70s, let me come on this side of it, we could not use just a roll bar. It had to be a roll cage. And it didn't have to be like a NASCAR roll cage. I'm just bringing my camera down again. It didn't have to be like a full cage like in NASCAR, but it had to be a cage. It had to protect the roof section of the car. So, you know, that was something that I had a scratch build. Now, what I did was I tried to use, and I had a Folgers Monte Carlo that was from Tim Richmond's NASCAR, and I kind of just took some of the parts out of that kit. I bashed that kit, and I wanted to figured, you know what, I'll just use the roll cage out of that kit. It's a 1/25th scale kit, so things should work. Well, it didn't. So it didn't work at all, and even though I could have probably made it fit, I thought it was easier to just build my own roll cage. So that's what I did. And so if you look, I don't know if you can see in there or not. It's again, it's awfully hard to see in there. But I used the roll bar that came with the kit, and then I just used some styrene rod, and I built my own roll cage for this car. And it's just some styrene. And again, I'll put a picture up here of it that's outside of the body so you can see what that looks like also. So never done that before, but now I can say I did. So the roll cage was scratch built on there. And then we also had to use, in those days, they required a racing seat with certified racing straps. So I did find a 3D racing seat that I really liked, and I got that from over on Matt's site, Matthew's site, that's MCV Products, and I think you might be able to see it in there, but there's a racing seat in there. And again, I'll put a picture of it up here, and it's on my website too. But that seat is really, really nice. And I also then got the safety harnesses from MCV, and everything went together really, really well. Of course, when you're an old fart like me, those racing straps, I struggled with them just because of my unsteadiness. But they work out really, really well. Really loved them a lot. So the other thing then, I scratch built my own shifter and shifter boot because I didn't like the one that came with the kit. So that's that. And then I also used the 3D printed tires and wheels, and that also came from MCV. In the mid to late 70s at Nazareth, PA, and at Orange County Fairgrounds, that's in Middletown, New York. And I believe it was also up at Big Diamond, which is in Pottsville, PA. You had to run Hoosier tires. I'm sure somebody was getting paid for that. So I looked around, and good old Matthew over at MCV had some Hoosier tires, and I got myself a set of them, and boy, they are really nice, and you could really see the Hoosier on them. And this was painted with the Tamiya rubber black, and then I did the wheels in the body color, and that body color I mixed myself. That's a shade of burgundy. And again, on my website, I have the formula that I use to mix that. It's actually pretty simple. But I did make a mistake when I mounted the wheels on the tires, in the fact that I have them on the wheels backwards, meaning that the hooser is on the inside. And I'll tell you, even though I reamed these out to get these wheels in, and they're still really, really, really tight, once I had them together and I realized what I did, I could not get those wheels out of the tires. And I didn't want to break them, so I just left them as it is. So the hooser markings are actually on the inside. And that's too bad, but you know, it is what it is. So that was another thing that was 3D printed. I also did the Mopar battery pack from, I think, yeah, that was from VCG resins. And there was absolutely no room under the hood to mount a battery. I mean, you might say, well, you could have fit it in here. No, I couldn't actually. It did not fit there. I wouldn't have been able to close the hood on it no matter what. It just wouldn't happen. I'm sorry for the fire siren going on behind me, but I'm only a block away from our fire station. And for a little town like I live in, that fire station whistle goes at least once a day anymore. Anyway, neither here nor there. I'm off topic. Anyway, so I mounted the battery up under the dashboard, and I scratch built my own battery tray. Now this one's not painted. The one that's in the car is painted a flat aluminum. But then I also found this after the fact. I found this guy, and this is also from the VCG resin, but not the mounting brackets. Everything, the mounting stuff, that came from the model car garage. And that's the first time I ever used that, and I really like it. But I had already had the battery installed, and again, on my website, and somewhere on this video, I'll put a picture of the battery that's up under the dashboard, up against the firewall inside this car. All right, so another thing is, I don't know if you folks had a problem with this, for those of you who built this. I had a gap between the body and the interior tub. So I had to add a strip of styrene on the interior tub to fill that gap. No big problem or no big issue, but you know, that's what I had to do there. Also, the netting that's on the driver's side, that came off of the roll cage that was on the Monte Carlo NASCAR. I cut that out of there and used that on the on this car. Now let's see. Then one of the other things that you had to do in that time period was you had to remove the gas tank and replace it with a fuel cell. And it was all about safety, and I get it, man, I do. So I cut the fuel cell. I cut the gas tank and the spare tire. What do you call it? The square where the spare tire fits. I cut that out of the bottom, out of the frame, and replaced it just with a piece of flat styrene, so that I could mount a fuel cell. So I cut the hood. I cut the trunk open on this, and I added hinges. They're not going to stay open by themselves. I don't care, actually. So I'll just use this to hold it. Oh, maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Let me just get that out of here. Okay, so I got a fuel cell from VCG Resins, and you can see it mounted in there. I used just some, I think it was 16 gauge soft drawn copper wire for hold down straps, and added just some wire for some hose, for some tubing and piping, and I painted the hold down straps. I think it was flat aluminum, something like that. So, and then I did start dirtying up the inside of the trunk. So the fuel cell is in there, and that was also 3D printed from VCG Resins. Now, let me get this off of here. Okay. And the windshield. Now, there was no glass run in these cars. And what the most drivers would do is use screening or fencing, either on the dash or just a small piece in front of the driver on the roll bar. So I decided I wanted to do the whole windshield and the grille instead of using the grille that came with the car. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the bumpers, so I stripped the chrome on them, and I just done them flat black on front and back. So that's what I did there. So this screening, I had no idea how I was going to handle that screening. I went to my local hobby shop and looked around, and my local hobby shop really has a focus on RC cars and trains. And I figured, you know what, I can definitely find something in the train section for some fencing or something like that. So I looked around and they didn't have anything, at least at my hobby shop. I then went online and I looked around for that stuff, and I couldn't find anything that I wanted for fencing. I didn't want rabbit fence because it's a little too small, chicken wire's not strong enough and too big. You know, I just wanted some nice square or rectangular opened fencing to use as a windshield, as a guard for the driver and for the grill up in the front. So I finally thought, okay, I'll make my own. So I got some 26 gauge wire, and I drew out a grid on a piece of cardboard that was like 1 millimeter by 2 millimeter grid, and thought, okay, I'm just going to string these wires together and interweave them, kind of like I'm going to show my age now, but we used to make our own pot holders when we were kids and stuff, and those pot holder looms. And I'll just do that with the wire. And as I started looking at it and doing it, it's like, what am I, crazy? I got to be nuts. So I went to Home Depot and I went to Lowe's and I looked around and I looked around, and I finally decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use some screen door and screen window repair. And that's exactly what I did. That is screen door or screen window repair. And here's the first one that I cut out, just a sample. And it's sticky on one side. You just cut it to your size, you peel the backing off, and bloop, it sticks right on. The only thing I had to do was clean out some of the adhesive that was stuck in the holes. In fact, I got a whole roll of it here. I bought a whole roll of it, only because it was cheaper by the roll. So anyway, so that's what this is on there, and those openings are about 1 millimeter by about 1.5 millimeters or something like that, which makes in 1/25 scale the openings would be about 1 inch, maybe 1.25 inches, and even though it's smaller than what I wanted it's okay. It's going to work out okay. So that's what I did for the windshield. It's just screen repair. That's all it is. Let's see. The next thing then is on the undercarriage. The undercarriage, before I leave there, back to the tires and the wheels. on a dirt track, you always want to have the stagger on your front tires. The front left is also always smaller than the front right. And you can see that I got the stagger about right. Actually, there's a formula for calculating that stagger, but I got the stagger to about what it should be for a half-mile oval, because I raced mostly at Nazareth, not me, but the car raced mostly at Nazareth, Pennsylvania's dirt track. So that was really nice. And this also came from Matthew over at MCV Products. It just wasn't a Hoosier tire, but it was just the right size, right thickness. So let's flip this thing over here. Okay. All right, so you can see the difference here in the stagger on that. So here's the underside. Oops. And I started dirtying up the underside already. You can also see that I did something new here too. I tried, this is where the fuel cell straps are mounted, and I tried to make it look like they were welded in place. First time I ever tried that. I don't know how, I guess, I think I'm okay with it. It looks okay to me. So I just added a little bit of red, a little bit of yellows, some silvers and stuff, just to make it look like, hey, that was welded in place. Again, I started dirtying things up. I just used a piece of solder for the exhaust. No muffler on these cars. Never ran a muffler on them. And last minute, and I just added this strap on here just as a last minute thing, and it's not really holding this down. I mean, this is glued in place, but I thought, you know, that would be kind of neat to say, oh, during the race we lost the exhaust pipe and we had to strap it on. So I just took some aluminum foil and I folded it over a couple of times and made this little strap and put it on. And I know it's hard to see on camera, but I actually have that pretty well dirtied up too, and a little bit of rust on it. So that's that. And then I had to lengthen the drive shaft. The drive shaft was about 7 millimeters short because of this Slant 6 engine. The transmission on this is a lot shorter than the engine that comes with this car. So I cut the drive shaft and added I think it was about a 7 millimeter piece in there to lengthen that drive shaft. So that's the underside. Again, I need to get some more dirtying up done on the car, but I gotta wait until the decals. Sorry, I keep bumping the camera a little bit. I gotta wait for the decals to get put on before I start doing that. So I think that pretty much covers it. As far as the 68 Dodge Dart, I actually have a magnet in there holding that trunk lid down. But anyway, so that's the way this one stands right now. This was actually a really fun build. I had a blast doing this, and I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a ton of new stuff from this that I can't wait to apply to other projects in the future. This was a really, really fun build, and you can bet that I will be using more 3D printed parts because they're really nice. I mean, MCV products, they go together really nice. They're not a whole lot of cleanup on them. They paint well. It's just, that's great. VCG products, I'm really, really happy with that. Really good stuff. Really, really nice stuff. So anyway, that's it. That's my 68 Dodge Dart for the USACC 4th annual build. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody else and what everybody else done to it. So until I see you again, bye. Oh, hey, before I leave you, for sure, hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, smack that subscribe button and ring the bell for all.
I don't release a lot of video. Oh, excuse me, a lot of videos, so I won't be bugging you too often. Anyway, now I'll say bye.